not only the unknown, but you also move away from certainty. And when you move away from that certainty, you also lose your community too. I was worried about the way they were going to treat my kids and the way they were going to interact with my family. I wasn't worried so much about what it meant for me.
It changed my political views. It changed a lot of my views. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, sorry, there's one way and it's our way. And if you don't agree, then, we'll pray for you.
There was all this heaviness from every direction because it was always this fear of doing something wrong, being imperfect, showing up the wrong way. One of the greatest disservices we as people have ever done for ourselves is convinced ourselves that we're in control of anything.
I abandoned my values and my principles. I was abandoning myself to let someone else's principles and values.
Yeah.
And that just wears on you. So, hey, Dan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming today and telling us about your book. I'm super excited, having perused it a little bit this last weekend. What I appreciate about this conversation is it's a conversation a lot of people are having around the country, but it's also not just about anything specific. You made it very broad. So it's not just about deconstructing religion or deconstructing relationships. It's kind of like, wow, this can be applied to all of life. And so kind of like when life hands you stuff and you're like, I don't know this matches up anymore. How do you kind of walk through that? So I guess I wanted to just ask you a few questions about it and give you an opportunity to share like why you wrote the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to have a conversation with you. So ask away and I'll do my best to share, what my thought process was, I guess.
Why don't you just tell us who you are
Yeah,
and then why you wrote the book for starters? So,
absolutely. So my name is Dan Brown. I'm a regular guy. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a guy who works a day job, a regular day job. But I've always had a pull to communicate with people through writing, and also, have been a host on TikTok now for just about a year, and really have focused my platform around positivity and mindset and empowering people to be able to go out and do things for themselves, to challenge themselves and get outside of their own comfort zones and get out of their own way. And that's really kind of where the beginning ideas of this book came from, is just recognizing that for myself, and I think for so many others, that a lot of the things that we're being challenged by on a daily basis are challenges that we built ourselves. And sometimes we don't always realize that. But that we've put some obstacles in our ways, some hurdles in our ways, some walls in our way, whatever way you want to phrase it, and we don't even realize that we were the ones who put them there.
or a dam,
And
we built the dam.
dam built the dam. Yep, that's the whole, the name of the book. Damned if you don't. Not from like a spiritual aspect, but just from like being
Mhm.
stuck behind a wall that you built yourself. And so, anyway, as living in this space of trying to create positive messaging to people and to provide people a place to land on TikTok when I'm doing my live hosting, is just a natural flow for me to look at my own life and say, where am I getting in my own way? And then to try to share that journey of the realizations of the ways that I was kind of stopping myself from making progress. Because if you have goals, if you want to grow, if you want to move on, you do kind of need to realize that sometimes you got to move some things out of your way, and sometimes you put them there first.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I love that introspection, and that's very important. I think it's the only way we're going to get anywhere because, the world reflects things back to us, but if we're not willing to look in the mirror and see what it's reflecting, we're not going to move anywhere. And I think that's why people get stuck. You're absolutely right. They just get stuck in life and they say, this just keeps happening to me. And I say this all the time. You're not a victim. You are the reason. You are the
Yeah.
reason. So having gone through some of the transitions you've gone through, which you talk about on your TikTok live, which I recommend people who are up at early hours come and listen. You have a great show, really great to listen to.
Thank
But
you.
you've talked about really openly that you left religion,
Yep.
start any blank, whatever religion we all relied on, and I was a staunch Republican, evangelical Christian, and I left it all too. So I fully appreciate I'm as much as I can fully appreciate what you did and where you're at.
Yeah.
Do you ever miss the certainty of it, even if it wasn't true?
Yeah. I mean, that was and I've been fortunate, very fortunate. My wife, I won't tell too much of her story, but like we've been through this journey together, and she's
Mhm.
been very supportive, right? And outside of like when you are in a situation where any organization, religious or otherwise, becomes so much of who you are, when you
Any
start
relationship,
any
I even take
relationship,
it true
yeah,
to relationships, right? Yeah.
relationship, organization, religion, when it starts to really be like who you are and it really is the all-encompassing pieces of who you are, when you
Hmm.
start to see the cracks in the wall, the cracks in the foundation, and you start to realize that maybe that's not for you anymore, you lose that certainty, you lose it was really a comforting thing because at that time in my life I had all the answers about what happens next and what to expect when this happens, and oh, this part of thing or this thing happened in your life, that's okay, here's an answer for that. And so
Hmm.
you move away from the knowing into really not only the unknown, but you also move away from certainty. And when you move away from that certainty, you also lose your community too, right? All
Yes.
the people who used to be my close friends who will no longer speak to me, who will no longer allow their kids to play with my kids, things like that, that because I don't have the same sense of certainty that they have,
Mhm.
just because I took some opportunity and determined for myself that it wasn't the path I wanted to pursue anymore. So
Hmm.
I do miss the certainty. It was so simple then, Adrienne, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest, just like I knew the answers and I didn't have to worry about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
There's
I
there's honestly though, like I've been through it enough now that like I'm at peace not knowing. I'm okay not knowing, and admitting to people I don't know what comes next. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but like I'm okay. Whereas before it was very much a panic driven, I need to figure it out. And there's just this realization that there's nothing to figure out. There's nothing to figure out. We're all just taking it a day at the time.
Yeah, there's nothing beyond the present moment that we have any control over. I agree.
Yep,
I love that. I love
exactly.
that. My next question is, so were you more afraid of being wrong or of being rejected as you started down this journey, or did you just kind of find yourself down the path and then go, oh shit, what did I do here?
Yeah. With regards to the religious deconstruction, you mean?
Yeah, just changing your life so much. And I really like whether you're with a narcissist and that becomes your identity, whether you're in relationships, whether you're even with your family, like sometimes we have built our family into a way that this deconstruction of one reality and realizing a different one is a scary process. But yeah, so when you were deconstructing religion, realizing the dams that you built, were you more afraid of being wrong or being rejected? Or did you notice it was happening and did you not notice until it was too late?
I mean, for me, deconstruction was long. I was I was probably, if you've heard the phrase PIMO, PIMO, do you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
So it's a phrase that some deconstructionists use, and it basically means physically in but mentally out.
Okay, yeah.
And I was in that place for quite some time, before I became also physically out. And I think that for me, it was more of the worry about, yeah, there was some worry for, if I'm wrong, what does that mean for my family? But also, what does it mean? Because the community I live in is very religious and is very centered on this faith that I'm no longer a part of. And again, it's the way that, I was worried about the way they were going to treat my kids and the way they were going to interact with my family. I wasn't worried so much about what it meant for me because I knew that I was making the choice, but the choice I made also had an impact for other people in my house. And
Right.
so I was more worried about that than anything else. I'm not, without getting super deep into it, I can just say that I know for me, this leaving was the right answer, but it still had some pain to it and some discomfort to it for other people in my family.
Yeah. Yeah, that hits a lot. Um, so back to the book a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, which is this, I'm assuming that a lot of this was predicated on this journey, this piece of the journey. Um, what were the first cracks that you saw in your life or in your perceptions or in the dams that you had built? What were the first ones you saw?
Yeah. So speaking, I'll try to speak a little specifically to the religious stuff and then go a little bit more broad to um, religiously. There was just some very strongly held doctrines that I could not reconcile. And no matter how hard I tried, and people refer to putting items on a shelf and saying, I'm just going to set it up there until it makes sense. Ultimately, I set enough stuff up there that the shelf broke and none of it made sense anyway. And so it just became this realization, at least in my own experience, that the things I was being told through my whole life weren't necessarily the actual truth around events. And when you start to learn some of that, it changes a little bit. So for me, the cracks, were really centered around just like the idea that anyone knows, anyone actually knows the truth beyond just a strong belief. And recognizing that not every person has to take the same path, or not every person even should take the same path. And that when you step back and look, for me, my family is made up. We were very fortunate to be able to bring people into our family through adoption, as well as biologically, and so we're a mix of people here. And some of the people in my family weren't being treated fairly inside the religion that I was living in, and it wasn't, and based on their race. And so I wasn't going to stick around for that, just, to hear how someone was going to justify that being the case. So is it just the cracks in the perfectionism of it all, the if you want to call it, painting over the rust, or whatever example you want to use there. It was just seeing through the illusion and the need for perfection, as far as religion goes. And then for my own self, my biggest wall that I built for myself was around how I needed people to perceive me, how I needed people to see me. I needed, even if I wasn't this person fully myself, I needed them to think I was. I needed them to think I had it all together. I needed them to think that I knew all the answers. I needed them to think that my family was perfect. I needed them to think that I did all the right things. I was so worried about what they thought that I was very much not engaged in being concerned with whether I was doing the right thing or not. It was I being seen doing the right thing?
Wow. Yeah, I think um that's and so what kind of fell out of that? I mean, that sounds like almost an existential crisis. Like that
It was.
what
It was.
put you into a crisis like, oh, I'm not as good as I think I am because I'm just being seen doing the right thing and my internal self is not lining up with my external self is what that
Yeah,
sounds like.
it was very much an existential crisis. It was very much an identity shift and crisis. Like I said, because it's so much of who I am, or who I was wrapped up in my religious upbringing, and so much of the religious upbringing was about being seen doing good, being seen doing right, being seen doing, like, it was always about being seen. It wasn't about being the right person. It was about being seen being the right person, right? And it was just one of these things that once you started to peel it back, the layers, and realize that, this isn't where I want to be, it really did become a whole deconstruction, even of my identity, not just the religion, but actually, like, who am I without this thing? And am I, and I didn't know. As a 40-year-old person, I had no idea who I was without this thing, because I'd lived my whole life in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can clearly identify with that. I remember one day waking up going, I'm not a Christian. I don't I can't I can't agree to the basic tenets of it anymore. And because I can't, that means I'm not. And now that means all my friends aren't my friends. I mean, some of them have maintained our friendship, but many of them have not because it changed my political views. It changed a lot of my views. And they're like,
Yeah.
"No, sorry, there's one way and it's our way. And if you don't agree, then, we'll pray for you,"
Yeah.
which I
Which is
usually
such a
say,
curious thing. And I don't mean to get this into no intention of any kind of a bashing of any kind, but
yeah, no, me
if they
either.
would if they would read the text and then listen to the words that come out of their mouth, they would realize that they're not congruent with each other.
That cognitive dissonance is very impressive, very impressive. But I, having been that cognitively dissonant and the mental gymnastics that it took for me to stay there, um, it is impressive. I
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of mind power to do it. So yeah,
I mean, I had it. I guess it's in there somewhere, but I decided that I'm not going to do that anymore.
yeah. I agree. And I do but I remember waking up, it's lonely and it's a little scary. I'm like, how do I make friends? Because they always somehow just came out of church and came out of going to conferences and came out of that. And now suddenly they weren't. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a little scary. So it is scary. And I can see where it's really scary for your children in a community like that. I grew up in a small town and I do understand kind of if you aren't fitting in, then you aren't in. And that
Yeah.
feels it's also very interesting once those kind of blinders come off and the veil is a little more clear, how you see the world so differently, like
Yes.
everything. Even people I used to look up to, I'm like, what was I looking up to?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Have that conversation at our house kind of regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice you have people to go through it with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's, and your children must have got to be benefiting from this. Um,
So, I mean, more than anything, and this is something that my wife and I both agreed upon, which is this, like if they want to grow up and be religious or be religiously minded, that's fine. What we really want to teach for our kids is just to be able to think for themselves and to understand when two and two doesn't add up to four. And
yeah,
so, like, let's take this and teach them how to think critically, how to ask questions that matter, and to be brave enough to do so. And
I love
so,
that.
ultimately, if that leads them on their own journey somewhere different than it's led us, that's fine. We just want them to be able to stand up for and speak to whatever it is they choose to put their faith in, that they're able to actually back it up with critical thought.
I love that. Um, so if you ran into your younger self tomorrow, say your 20-year-old self,
Yeah.
what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Lighten up. Lighten up. I was very focused at 20. I was very focused on the perfectionism of it all.
Mhm.
Again, being seen, being perfect, but also at that time, like I was very much dialed into like really actually trying to be a perfect person, trying to live as perfectly as possible. Um, I took things way too seriously, and even as I grew older and started to, before I started any kind of deconstruction, just realizing that, if there was a God out there, he didn't want me to be miserable about trying to keep his rules. You know, if God is supposed to be a God of joy and love, he probably wanted me to feel some of that too. And it was just, I was too busy focusing in on the letter of the law to be able to enjoy the spirit of the law.
Yeah. What do you think are the major differences now, in terms of how you approach life and kind of what you do with yourself? I mean, an example for me was, yoga was evil. You aren't supposed to do yoga.
Yeah,
Um, don't read the zodiac. Don't read your horoscope. That's of the devil.
sure.
So those are some things now I'm like, oh, there's seasons for everything. It says that in the Bible, and like horoscopes just line up with seasons. Like, tell me more. And so,
Yeah,
what are the things you enjoy now that you didn't or couldn't before?
yeah. I mean, I've already alluded to it a little bit, just like the okayness and comfort of not knowing and being okay not having to have an answer for everything and being okay in the unknown. Similar to you, like very much more paying attention to like nature and the things in nature a little bit, rather than ascribing it to some all magnificent, benevolent something or someone. Just being aware of and seeing how that shifts, different things for me and my family, by paying attention to and honoring what we see in nature. Um, Not feeling guilt for being a human is probably the biggest thing. Like there is a scripture that was taught to us all the time. You know, the natural man is an enemy to God, and always has been, right? And so, like, anytime you caught yourself or found yourself, you know, being a human, it was this indictment upon yourself of you are unworthy, you are not okay, you are, you know, like just this constant perpetual repeating of here's why you're not okay, you know,
Yeah,
and just coming to this place now where I don't worry about that. That's probably the biggest thing is being able to finally just be okay being a person.
I love that. Just being your authentic self.
Yeah.
And you're so delightful. So I love that. I'm glad your
Thank you.
authentic self has joined us in reality here. And I found you.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate that.
um, and are there any questions? Because I'm gonna send this to you so you
Mhm.
can cut it up and use it for shorts if you want to or something.
Sure.
And so what are some Danisms that you want to, some Dan freaking tasticisms that you might want to have me ask you and you can answer about? Are there anything?
Let's see. I think, you know, just a few things I would say, you know, recognizing we all built walls in our lives at different times for different reasons, and they were put there on purpose to allow us to protect ourselves, right? And, you know, those of us who have struggled with perfectionism, probably when we were younger, we had situations where people made it very clear that whatever we were doing was not acceptable. And so we decided to just be as perfect as we could, and even to the point of hiding our imperfections, because as long as that person thought we were perfect, it was okay. Right. Uh, and recognizing that those walls we built initially, perfectionism would have been built as a protection for us, and we didn't know any better, so we did the best we could. But now, as we age, those same walls we put up to protect us really are the things that are stopping us. You know, they're the things that are stopping us from being able to move forward in our journey to whatever it is we hope to be or want to be. We still get stuck in perfectionism, and before it was to help us stay safe, but now it's keeping us from being able to go do anything new. And fear, isolation, control, comparison, all those things that we used, you know, to protect, we built walls to protect ourselves and to make things look okay to the outside world. Those are all walls now that still exist, but they're walls that we have to find a way to get over and out of, rather than using them to keep us safe. And the truth is, there's no growth that's available to us in a place of comfort. You know, I talk about the comfort zone a lot, and it's this thing that it's constantly moving. It's elastic always. If your
Mhm.
comfort zone isn't getting bigger, it is getting smaller. And if it's getting smaller, it means pretty soon all the things that you've just been like, well, I'll just stay right here in the middle of my comfort zone, it will shrink around you so tight. And this is where people end up feeling anxiety and other things that, like, they didn't even realize they haven't changed anything in what they're doing in their day-to-day life, and they still start to feel anxious and uncomfortable with what they're dealing with because they've let this comfort zone shrink right around them until it's
Yeah.
almost like a shrink wrap on them, and they're just like, well, what do I do? How do I, what can I even do? uh, you've got to be willing to get out and be uncomfortable on purpose, because whether you like it or not, discomfort is going to be a part of your life, and it's coming. So the question is, do you want to be uncomfortable on purpose and grow in the ways that you choose? Or do you want to sit and wait for the discomfort to come and put you in a position where you don't have a choice?
Yeah, I think that's brilliantly said. I think what I hear you saying and what I agree with is either you're evolving or you're devolving.
Yeah.
And
It's constantly, there's no stagnation there. There's no, you know, you can sit in one spot for a minute, but once you've sat there too long, you're going to be constricted. So you just can't stay there forever.
and I also tell people that look, the program that was installed wasn't necessarily installed by you.
Yeah.
So you can start uninstalling this program and installing programs that work for you. And a lot of the programs that are installed, they worked uh, and helped you survive in that time. And
Yeah,
now, just sticking with them because they helped you survive doesn't mean they're the ones you want to maintain.
for
So,
sure.
I think
There's,
what you're saying is keep questioning, keep questioning, keep pushing. So,
yeah, and not even in a negative way. Just be willing to
no.
learn and be willing to be wrong. right? You're not
Yeah.
always right. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to learn something new.
And I was maybe right at one time. There's a lot of things I was wrong about, but maybe at one time that just served me and now it just doesn't
Yeah.
serve me anymore. So, and there were things I did, there's so many, I think the thing too that you're saying is be willing to reevaluate it. Just keep reevaluating it
Yeah.
because, I was told a lot of things were really wrong. And now I'm like, oh, what's wrong with that? Really? I just
Yeah.
buy it at face value. But what
Yep.
part of you felt the most relief the moment you admitted it? Was there a part of you that felt relief or was it more fear or trepidation?
I mean, there was a lot of fear initially just because the religious tradition I was raised in was very focused on like the performative nature of the faith and some of the required ordinance performances. And so, it was, if I'm wrong, if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, then what am I costing my family? And so that was, but after I got over that initially, it was just like a total relief of just like there was all this heaviness from every direction because it was always this fear of doing something wrong, being imperfect, showing up the wrong way, and perpetually finding myself having fallen short, which is just a difficult place to exist.
How about this? Yes, I hear that. It's a scary leap. But let me ask you this. What beliefs did you drop intellectually, but your nervous system still sometimes wants to obey, wants to go back to?
That's a great question. I mean, I think having a belief that whether myself or someone else had the answers was very comforting, and it would be nice. My brain would really love for that to be the case because there's a lot of life that you figure out as you go that you realize that nobody has the answer. We're all just making it up as we go, every single one of us. And even the people who seem to have it the most put together, maybe looking at it through a different lens, but they're also just making it up as they go.
Yeah.
So if someone had all the answers and they wanted to hang out and give me some, that'd be great.
Yeah. Um, if you were to describe yourself now, you know, after writing the book, after going through the process, um, how would you describe yourself? Before you were the perfectionist, the faithful one, the obedient one. How would you describe yourself now? What?
The one who is doing the best he can with what he knows, and when he learns better, he does better.
Oh, I love that. I think Maya Angelou says that too. When we know
Yeah,
better, we do better. Um,
exactly. I'm
well,
just a work in progress, but it's also this recognition, Adrienne, that like you can simultaneously be a work in progress and a masterpiece, right? And so many of us are waiting for the day that, well, when I get to this point, when I have this much money in the bank, when I have been at my job for this many years, when I've been married for this long, whatever, like we are assigning some kind of, achievement to some, to when we have arrived. And it,
uh,
and it's and it's we miss so much of our journey and the joy that we can feel in those opportunities by just, well, when this and when that, you know you can be who you are imperfectly and still be amazing and beautiful and wonderful and have a life that's fulfilling and without having to wait for the when this and when that.
that's perfect. I love that. Yeah, like build the plane while it's still flying, while
Yeah.
you're flying it, Raise your hand before you have the total question formed. Volunteer before you know all the details.
Yeah,
Do you have parts of you that you have or have not forgiven for staying so long?
that's a good question. I mean, I think yes and no. And what I mean by that is like intellectually, logically, as I just said, when I know better, I do better. And so logically, I can say I don't need to stress about this. But there are certainly times that like I look back and I'm like, I have 40 years that I was in this thing, for hours and hours and hours a week. I spent time in congregational leadership, and I spent time doing a lot of different things. There were times when I was basically working like a second full-time job almost based on religious stuff. And so I would like some of that time back, so there's parts of me that's like I wish I had been around a little more at the times that I wasn't. So it's a yes and no for me. Like I'm doing better because I know better, but I would love to go back and recapture some of the time that I wish I hadn't spent.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And I feel like I um indoctrinated my children into some thinking that they have to kind of live with the consequences of. They got to unravel it for themselves. And I feel some guilt around that,
Yeah,
because my children were um out of the house by the time I woke up and realized. And so
yeah.
um they were all those a couple of them were part of the journey. They're like, "Mom, what in the world are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense."
Isn't it nice though when your kids like good for you for being a mom who taught their kids to be able to be confident enough to ask a question like that.
Yeah, they're
Not all kids raised, I don't know how you raised your kids, but there's a lot of people who are raised religiously who would never dare ask their parent that question.
oh, it's kind of funny. I raised them, in the Catholic Church. They went to Jesuit schools, all the things. I think those Jesuits are a little bit rebellious underneath all that, because my kids certainly are. Um, so what do you want people to get out of your book? What's the number one takeaway, the number two takeaway that you want them to get from the book?
So I list a number of walls in the book, and I've named a couple of them off, but
You
you
named
know,
one twice. That's my next question. You named one
I
twice.
did, and that was on purpose for me. That was on purpose for me.
Yeah.
Right, because control has been so much of a challenge in my life, and trying to have control of everything. So there are two chapters on the wall of control, because for me that was my biggest personal challenge, was just letting things be rather than me trying to make them be. And so just recognizing this is not an exhaustive list, but I hope that people can maybe see in themselves a little bit these things where they didn't, and then maybe they didn't realize that they've built some walls up around themselves that they need to navigate and figure out. But just to open their minds a little bit to the idea of what walls did I build that I put in my own way, and what can I do to get them out of my own way? Because I really do believe that everybody deserves good things in their life, and I think that we're also all capable of bringing those good things into our lives, but most of the time the thing that stops it is also ourselves, that we stop ourselves because even though we don't maybe say it or verbalize it, there's a wall holding us back because we don't think we're worthy deep down, or that we don't think that that we know enough, or that that we've experienced enough. Like we're just holding ourselves back according to all these things like I talked about before, the when this and when that. We're always putting timelines on everything and making that a qualification somehow for being able to have what we want in our life. But we all deserve to have good things in our life, and we don't need to wait for anybody's permission for those things to happen.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, I love the book. I love the way you laid it out. It was I loved all the titles. Tell me more about why control is in there twice. I mean, you
Yeah.
kind of said I put it in there twice because it's my thing, but say more about that. And what's the difference between the two chapters for you?
Yeah. Well, I think they're very really, there's not a huge amount of difference. They're kind of similar. One is a little bit more personal than the other, but they're still mostly similar. For me, again, the idea of having it in there twice is just simply that I think one of the greatest disservices we as people have ever done for ourselves is convinced ourselves that we're in control of anything. And I was one of those people who like I needed things to go a certain way, and now I've learned like I'm ADHD, and there's a few other things like mentally that probably built me that way too. but just like I needed it to go according to plan. And if it didn't go according to plan, why didn't go according to plan? Now I've got like I was just always trying to control, and it wasn't just about controlling the moments, but it was also again back to that broader piece, which was controlling how I was being perceived, right? Controlling how people were seeing me out in the world. And so for me, putting it in there twice again was just the reminder of like, you're not in control. You need to remember that this wall has got to be knocked down because it's you don't have control as much as we all like to pretend. None of us actually have control. We can all do our best to go out and build things and make things happen for ourselves. Ultimately, whether or not it happens, we don't have any control over. We just go out and do our best and let it be. And so, reminding myself twice, that the control is not mine, and all I can do is show up a willing participant in whatever the day brings is a good way for me to remember to just take it easy. Life is not so serious. Go out and be okay with what happens next.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that in some ways we're more in control than we know by not trying to control things, by saying,
exactly.
just kind of lining up with the vibe and it will come to you. Like you'll attract better. Um,
Yeah, but you can't force anything, I guess, is what I was trying to say. Like
yeah,
it.
exactly. You can't.
Yeah,
You can't enforce the how. And it
yeah,
always doesn't look like how we think it's going to look like. Like I've had friends or people I know that are suddenly not my friend anymore one day, and I think, well, how did that happen? Well, then if you really let it go and follow the flow, you'll find like there's a line of people to replace it that are going to bring more of what you need to your life. And so, I love what you're saying because it's you can get what you want, just quit trying to control it and
yeah.
probably come more easily to you. So, yeah,
Well, and there's seasons for everything, and as sad as it is, and I don't mean to minimize, relationships that may be lost because I've lost some and that's painful, but as you grow and as you learn more of who you are and lean into what it is you want to do and what feels right for you, you
hmm
are going to have people who elect not to be a part of that growth, and you're going to have other people that you realize you're like, this person is not helping me on my journey. I mean, it's tough and it's uncomfortable, but it's you got to be recognizing that there's seasons and not everybody's meant for every season.
absolutely. And some people just choose not to go any further with you. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and that includes family.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest pill for me, was the hardest pill for me to swallow. I mean, I woke up one day and realized um I didn't know where my friend group was gonna come for. And then I'm like, oh, at least I have my family. I'm like, or not. Maybe not.
Yep, I hear you. I do.
I have
I'm
my cute little
fortunate.
boys, and that's my grandson, and that's kind of what I can so far.
Yeah. I've got I've got three brothers, and one of whom I'm really pretty close with, two of whom I'm close with them too, but one more than the other two. And just because it is, what can you converse with them about? What can you say? And you just,
Yeah.
but you also don't have to, you don't owe your energy to people who you don't owe it to everybody.
Yeah, I think one thing I learned was that one, don't owe it to everybody, no matter who they are. But I also learned that the reasons I used to be so willing to move my boundaries, sacrifice my self-respect, all those things was because I was people pleasing
Yep.
and I was afraid of rejection and not realizing that rejection is protection sometimes, and let the rejection happen. It's okay. And just every time I abandoned my values and my principles, I was abandoning myself to let someone else's principles and
Yeah.
values. And that just wears on your
It
self-esteem
does.
over time. And I don't think we realize that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talk about this kind of regularly, which is, and like, you've got to set appointments with yourself that you'll keep. You can't continue to move your everything around in your life for everybody else. And that might make some uncomfortable situations come up. But it will also, like you just said, I mean, it's going to cause some realizations in a hurry, because people who are only there to get the energy out of you that they could get out of you are going to stop showing up when you stop giving them the energy that they came for.
Yeah.
and it's going to make some awkward conversations maybe, or maybe no conversations because people just disappear. But you've got to make appointments for yourself that you will keep. And I don't just mean like, yeah, I go to the spa, or whatever, but like when you say this is a thing that's important to me and this is the time that I'm going to do it, that then you do that thing. And when someone else comes and says, well, Adrienne, I need you to do this thing for me, you look at your calendar and you say, I can help you, but not during this time. This time is mine, and this time is for me to do whatever it is I'm doing. And if just be willing to keep the appointments for yourself, because otherwise all you're doing is teaching when you're teaching people how to treat you when you treat yourself that way.
Mic drop. I've been doing,
Yeah.
I just was, I was like building this whole thing and then I kept stopping to help other people do things. And I'm like, now I'm behind on what I was doing for me, but all these other people are doing. And I'm like, you've got to quit doing that. You've got to be, yeah. So I love that
I,
so much.
I'm a strong advocate for helping others and showing up for others and serving others, but only after you have filled your own cup.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, that's really selfish. And no, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. What's really selfish is when somebody expects me to continue filling their cup when my cup is empty.
Yeah. Put your own oxygen on first is
Yeah.
there's a reason they say
Yeah.
that. And I'm not going to,
Yeah.
and as a nurse, I'm not going to disagree with it anymore. And,
Yeah.
and also for going my own goals, who's more selfish? You're asking me to give up me to take care of you, you
Yeah.
know, that's who's being selfish here. So
No.
yeah, it's a really hard lesson to learn and a valuable one too. So,
Well, and it's been perpetuated for so long the other way societally, not just in religion, but in society as a whole. That you always you be kind, put others first, think of others first. And again, I don't have a problem with the serving of others and giving to others. I just want to make sure the people are doing it from a place of safety. Otherwise, you end up with people, giving not only like energy but also monetarily from a position where they shouldn't.
yeah.
Because they just feel so pressured and they don't know how to protect themselves.
Well, or uh because they want to be liked and they want to
Yeah.
be accepted. And I did
Yep.
that for a long time too. So,
Yeah. Oh, me too, for sure.
well, let's tell everyone how they can find your book
Yeah.
and where else they can find you. Because as I mentioned, can you tell everyone where on TikTok you're under DanFreakingTastic? It'll be
DanFreakingTastic is my handle. So if you just look for at DanFreakingTastic, and the book is available in the TikTok shop, also available on Amazon. And so, for those who care to have a signed copy, go ahead and order it through the TikTok shop, and I'll get it signed for you. If you don't mind about it not being signed, then grab it through Amazon. It'll probably get to you faster. But yeah, available in both places, and soon on audio. So we're working on that.
How did you get it on the TikTok shop? Hang on. Different
Yeah.
topic.
No, you're fine. I just had it printed, and you can go in and create yourself a seller account and submit, all the appropriate business documentation to show that you have a business entity, and then list your products.
Got it. Okay. I was hoping I could just somehow connect it to the Amazon account or something, but
No, no, it would
figure that
be
out.
and they're changing. This is the thing, so I have a bunch of copies here that are for sale on the TikTok shop, but if I don't sell them in the next 10 days, I have to ship some to TikTok directly. They will start fulfilling orders in the next week or so.
Oh,
And
okay.
I won't be able to fulfill them anymore. So I'll put a link in my bio or something for people to get it to me through via Venmo or whatever.
Okay.
We'll do something.
Uh, I made these postcards, and so when people buy it, from the AZ, I will send them a postcard afterwards that I sign. They can stick it inside their book. So,
Yeah.
well, I love that. Thanks for the insight on that because I've been trying
Yeah.
to figure out another way to promote this. So, well, Dan, thank you so much
Yeah.
for this. I think it's fantastic and helpful, and I think people will get a lot out of it. Um, I love that the story isn't just about churches, it's about your lives and your family, it's about politics, it's about
Yeah.
roles, about expectations, it's in the nervous system and how to change that.
Yeah.
And that first crack isn't rebellion, it's awareness. It feels like rebellion, feels like you're rebelling against something. And And once you see it, you kind of can't unsee it anymore. It just keeps popping up. So you're watching this and you feel something, that doesn't mean you're broken. It might mean you're waking up. I would recommend you follow Dan. In my screen, he's over
Thank you.
there, so I hope I'm pointing at Dan. Buy his book. I think you'll find it very insightful, and he's accessible. I think if you message him with questions about his book, he will respond. I'm Nurse Adrienne, and I teach people how to have a life that they were told they couldn't. And part of that journey is what Dan and I have been through. And so thanks for sharing. We'll see you all next time. Feel free to follow all the links in the bio, and you can get to know us, and the people that we follow and that we surround ourselves with generally have the same philosophies. So thank you very much.